Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to tackle something pretty dense, but really important.
Very important.
We've got our hands on Executive Order 14248. The official title is Preserving and Protecting the Integrity of American Elections. And it was just published in the Federal Register in March of 2025.
And, our goal here is to really cut through all that legal language.
Exactly. We want to get to what it actually means for how elections are run and, what it means for your vote. We're trying to find this what in all this.
Well, it starts off with a bang, I'll tell you that. Section 1, the purpose section, it sets this really stark context.
How so?
It basically argues that the U.S. system is, and this is their framing, failing to adopt protections that are already common in other countries.
So it's not just about problems here at home. It's framing this as the U.S. falling behind internationally.
Precisely. And it's a rhetorical choice, a very strong one. It specifically points to countries like India and Brazil.
India and Brazil? For what?
For linking voter ID directly to biometric databases. The order is essentially saying, look, these countries are doing this while the U.S. still relies on just checking a box on a form.
That does set a tone of urgency. Are there other examples in there?
Oh, yes. It mentions Germany and Canada for requiring public counts of paper ballots to reduce disputes. And then it gets to mail-in voting.
Always a hot cup.
Right. And it points to Denmark and Sweden for, and I'm quoting the idea here, sensibly limiting mail-in voting and having really strict deadlines. No counting ballots that show up late.
Okay, so the core argument is that elections need to be actively protected from, from everything. Fraud, errors, even just suspicion.
That's the idea. And that the way to do that is to enforce existing federal laws on citizenship and deadlines much more aggressively.
All right, let's dig into that. The first big change, and maybe the biggest, is about proving you're a citizen when you register to vote. This is Section 10.
This is a major, major shift. It targets the National Mail Voter Registration Form.
The one managed by the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission?
That's the one. And the EAC mandates that the EAC must now require actual documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. So just checking the box that says, I am a citizen, that's no longer going to cut it.
Okay, so what counts as proof? I mean, what does the average person need to go find in their files to register?
Well, the order lists a few things. A copy of a U.S. passport works. A real ID that says you're a citizen, that works too.
Okay.
An official military ID. But here's the key part. If you just have a regular driver's license, you have to provide that, plus some other separate proof of citizenship, like a birth certificate.
Wow. So the burden of proof is now completely on the voter to produce a document.
It's a total flip. It's no longer trust the voter's word, it's verify the voter's document. And states have to record all the details.
What do you mean record the details?
They have to write down what kind of document it was, the ID number, the expiration date. They're building a verifiable paper trail for every single registration.
That sounds like a massive data operation, and I assume it means federal agencies have to get involved to check all this, not just for new voters, but for people already on the rolls.
You're right on the money. That's Section 2 and 3. It pulls in the big ones. Homeland Security, the State Department, and the Social Security Administration.
The agencies that hold all the data.
Exactly. DHS, for example, has to give state election officials free access to their systems to verify citizenship status.
And this is for current voters, too. So states could be running their entire voter file against federal databases.
That's the mandate. The Social Security Administration has to make things like the Death Master file available to clean up the rolls. And then there's the enforcement piece.
Let me guess, the Attorney General.
You got it. The AG is ordered to prioritize prosecuting people under existing laws that forbid non-citizens from voting. They're basically being told to, make this a top priority nationwide.
Okay, so citizenship verification is huge. But let's shift to the actual voting process, the machines. What does the EO say about the technology we use to cast our ballots?
This part is all about building trust, making the system more verifiable. It's in Section 4. And it targets the EAC's guidelines for voting systems.
The VVSG 2.0, right. So for you listening, these are basically the technical standards that all the voting machines in the country have to meet to get certified.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the order tells the EAC to change those standards.
How?
The crucial change is that voting systems should not count votes using a barcode or a QR code.
So no more of those ballots where you make your choice, and the machine prints out a summary with a barcode that you can't actually read yourself.
Exactly. The idea is to get rid of any step where the machine is reading something the voter can't easily check with their own eyes. The new rule is that every system has to produce a voter-verifiable paper record.
Which is, I mean, that sounds reassuring. You can look at the piece of paper and know it reflects your vote before it goes in the box.
That's the goal. Protect against fraud or just simple mistakes. But here's the kicker.
There's always a kicker.
The timeline. The EAC has to review and potentially recertify all voting systems in the country under these new rules within 180 days.
180 days. That seems impossible.
It's incredibly aggressive.
What happens if a state's machines all use barcodes and suddenly get decertified?
It could cause chaos. States would have to scramble to buy brand new equipment, which takes years, not 6 months. It puts enormous pressure on everyone.
And I see Homeland Security pops up again here in Section 6, right?
As you do. The Secretary of Homeland Security has to assess the security of all voting systems, especially anything connected to the internet. And tying back to the citizenship theme, the order says you have to prevent any non-citizen from being involved in running an election.
Not even as, like, a volunteer poll worker.
The text says involved in the administration, which is broad. It can mean everything from handling ballots to setting up machines.
Okay, we've done registration, we've done the machines. Now for the part that always causes fights. When is the election actually over? This is where it gets really interesting.
This is Section 7. And it tries to settle the debate over ballot deadlines by focusing on one thing: Election Day.
What's the position it takes?
A very firm one. It says that for a vote to count, it must be both cast and received by state officials by the close of polls on Election Day.
So if I mail my ballot and it's postmarked on Election Day, but it arrives a day or two later.
Under this order's interpretation, it would not be counted.
But lots of states have laws that allow for that.
And this is a direct federal challenge to those state laws. The EEO directs the Attorney General to enforce this interpretation against states that count what it considers late ballots.
So how does the federal government force a state to comply? I imagine some states will just say no.
Well, this is where you see the real use of federal power. It's about money.
Power of the purse.
Exactly. Section 7 says the EAC has to make federal funding, like from the Help America Vote Act, conditional on states adopting this uniform Election Day deadline.
So if you want the federal money, you have to play by their rules.
That's the leverage. And it gets even more intense in Sections 5 and 8 with the Department of Justice.
What do they do?
The DOJ is told to go out and seek information sharing agreements with all the states. They want direct access to state data on suspected fraud, double registrations, things like that.
A federal pipeline directly into state election data. What if a state refuses to sign an agreement?
And that's where the hammer drops.
Yeah.
If a state is, as the text says, unwilling to cooperate, the AG is told to prioritize federal enforcement in that state.
And there's more, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. The DOJ is also told to review withholding other discretionary grants and funds from that state. We're talking about things like policing grants, other federal money that states really rely on.
That's a huge threat. It's basically using the entire federal budget as leverage to force compliance on election rules.
It is. It's a fundamental shift.
So as we wrap up, let's just boil this down. What are the two big takeaways for you, the listener?
I'd say there are two pillars here. First, there's this massive shift to mandatory documentary proof of citizenship for everyone who registers to vote, using federal databases to back it all up.
Okay, that's number one.
And number two is a huge standardization of the voting process itself, mandating paper trails, getting rid of barcodes, and enforcing a single hard deadline for all ballots to be received on Election Day.
And it's important to remember, this is an executive order. It's not a new law from Congress. It's a directive to federal agencies on how to enforce the laws already on the books.
That's a critical point. It's about using the existing power of the executive branch to its absolute maximum. It's also worth noting that Section 9 explicitly stops all work on a previous order, EO 1419, which was all about promoting voter access. So it's a real reversal.
So what does this all mean for you, the curious learner? Well, this AO tries to standardize things about our elections, like ID and deadlines, that have always been different from state to state. So the real question this deep dive leaves us with is this: how will these new federal mandates, enforced with the power of federal funding and the threat of lawsuits, reshape that long-standing, often tense balance between federal power and a state's right to run its own elections? That's something to think about as this all starts to unfold.